Let's talk Apple here, Patrick, because they got their big software show.
Yeah.
That kicks off, of course, on Monday. The stock is down, Patrick, about 20% this year. The Journal reminding us that is the worst run the shares have experienced ahead of the company's WWDC event since at least, they say, 2010. What explains that, Patrick? And what does Apple need to do to turn this around?
Yeah, it's been a bad year for Apple, and some of it has been caused by Apple, and some of it has been caused by the market. The first thing is AI. Apple telegraphed a year ago that it would bring AI to the masses, and it missed its schedules, had to pull its advertising, and it was pretty much a disaster on all fronts. And then you had China, which a lot of things going on in China. The first is they're losing market share in China as brands like Huawei become more competitive, and there's a sense of nationalism of we should buy Chinese phones by the Chinese. And then, of course, you have tariffs where most of Apple's iPhones historically had been made in China. I give them credit for moving 60% of the final assembly over to India by the end of the year, but it's too little, too late for them. So it's really multiple issues that's been dragging on the stocks. And quite frankly, Josh, what is exciting investors is AI and AI growth in the data center. And Apple is all not that. They are AI on the device at best.
On AI, Patrick, here's what I hear. I hear some Apple bulls make the following argument. I'm very curious to get your take. They say Apple is playing a different game. In other words, they'll argue, Apple is not spending billions and billions of dollars on AI CapEx. That is the Meta, Microsoft, Google playbook. Apple, they'll say, different strategy. What they're doing is they're going capital light and then charging a fee to model providers who want access to their many, many iOS users. And that they're trying to argue, hey, their argument is that is a smarter way to generate a compelling return. What do you make of that argument?
So it's a little bit of a pass the buck argument. I think if Apple had a core competency in the cloud beyond downloading movies and backup and iTunes, it would be a very different story. I think that Apple, because it doesn't have the core competency in the cloud, is much more focused on making the on-device experience better. And I give Apple, I like that strategy for device makers. But in reality, as we've seen with companies like Samsung, they're leveraging on-device AI for themselves and then leveraging Google for, quite frankly, the user doesn't care where it comes from. They just want a good experience that's very quick, and they don't want to pay a lot for it. So I think it's a pass the buck type of strategy.
What do you make of an argument I heard on today's show, Patrick, from an Apple bull, who will say, listen, it comes down to the install base. They've got a lot of loyal fans all over the world. I think close to 2.4 billion active devices. It's a number it's hard to even get your head around. And their point is, hey, that's a lot of loyal, locked-in fans. Yeah. That buys Apple not just months, but they'll tell me years, in their opinion, to get AI right.
Yeah, Josh, they're absolutely correct. Apple has some of the most loyal customers out there, and we can debate whether loyalty is really just because they don't open up iMessage and they don't want to be the green chat along with the blue chat folks and be looked at as, what's wrong with you. But they do have loyalty, and smartphones have, in essence, have become a commodity, and the equation that goes through somebody's head if they want to switch is really about, my gosh, this is going to be a huge hassle. It's like changing a bank, right? What a hassle to be able to do that. So 100% there's a lot of stickiness. And I like to say that brands have half-life, okay? And I think Apple can continue to not deliver on AI and not do a tremendous amount of damage to their brand in the United States and Western Europe. But when it comes to Southeast Asia and China and Japan and South America, it is becoming an issue here, and the longer that they're looked at as uncompetitive.
Patrick, another theme I got to get your take on because we were all watching it play out in real time. Trump and Musk, the bromance, the breakup, Patrick. What did you make of what you were watching on social media unfold? And in your opinion, are there broader implications, broader lessons learned for CEOs and maybe tech CEOs in particular from all that?
Yeah, so first of all, it was ugly and it was very, very personal, and it shook the Tesla stock, which I'm scratching my head a little bit on that one, but I do have opinions. But I think it's important, and I do think most publicly traded tech companies have kind of had an arm's length relationship with the administration, and they got close, but they didn't get too close. Like the contingent of companies that went over to the Middle East and cut these major deals. You want to be part of that as a tech CEO. If there's a giant tech roundtable where they're discussing something like regulation or privacy, you want to be part of that. You want to be looked, I wouldn't say it's pro administration, but at a minimum neutral. You can no longer sit on the sidelines as a tech CEO and not go to the White House, pay homage, and maybe even kiss the ring at the White House or down in Mar-a-Lago.